and I didn't know how to drop them into the show, so I don't know. I just found this is random stuff that I had recorded in my basement,
I dig.
and then
I like
I
it.
guess it fades out when I click the button again. So there you go. That's the Muzak background.
That's the intro. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay.
It's a side address mic, as we discussed.
Yeah, I'm
Stay the same distance away from the mic. Put a fist distance away, and then
pissed.
adjust accordingly based on whether it sounds good from fist distance.
Well, to me, it sounds the same. So
Oh, I see.
I rely on others, namely you, to tell me if it
Okay.
sounds good or bad.
I rely on the little picture of what the ups and downs of how loud it is. So let's go with that.
Okay.
Do you want to play? Do you want to play AI or not?
Well, I want to update. This is important to me. I did I did a little research last night. You know, we had the discussion about Luddite, and I made mention of the group that looked like Amish or Mennonite that I sat next to at a restaurant in South Dakota.
Yeah.
They're called Hutterites, Hutt.
Hutterite
Yeah.
is very close to Luddite.
So I don't. Yeah, this group, they're all like the Anabaptists from Germany that left because of persecution after the Reformation. They went to Russia first, made their way to North America, and they're doing well here. So there you go.
Can you turn up your mic or move closer to the mic?
How about that?
That's better.
Okay.
Can you hear my HVAC closet right behind me?
I can't, but I have a window. I'm on the third floor, and I have a window air conditioning unit. And if that kicks on, I have a hunch that we'll all hear that. So
I'll let you know.
we'll see.
It's 100 degrees here, but I'm in a cold basement, so it's 66 like it is all year long.
Is it really 100 degrees?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, you're probably well. We'll do a weather show some other day.
The next game should be Huttite or Luddite. which is the thing that the Huttites did, and which is the thing that the Luddites did.
I'll probably not do too well with that game. And
I mean, it's just going to be multiple choice based on me reading the Wikipedia page of each of the ites.
Well,
but I don't want to give away the secret though to how I make a good game. I don't know how people did this for their morning shows before they had Wikipedia to rely on.
Are morning shows still popular?
I'm the wrong person to ask. Do I listen to one? No, and I haven't for a long time.
You know, when I was, maybe it was college, I don't remember, but Bob and Tom was a big thing.
It was a big thing when I was a kid, and terrestrial radio was what I had, and I drove around in a car with a terrestrial radio, and I did jobs that were driving around in a car with a terrestrial radio for, Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. until 4 p.m. So I listened to a lot of talk radio then.
Yeah, that was AM radio's heyday, in my opinion. AM radio, that was the internet of that time. Is you could find lots of crazy things on AM radio.
I went to a career day at a radio station when I was 13, and I had two takeaways. The first was I didn't want to work at a radio station after that, based on the guy that answered the phone and told me I could come by whenever. He gave me a tour of what they did. He seemed to appreciate my interest, and he answered all my questions, but he also didn't seem like he was particularly happy or fulfilled or enthralled with the work in any way. It was a syndicated station. All their content, they bought it on CDs, and then they edited it manually to cut out the dead air and shorten it for length. And then they aired that over the AM airwaves. And so the first takeaway was, I don't want to do that guy's job. And the second takeaway was that the transmission tower was painted also manually by someone using a gloved hand dipped into basically a sack of paint on a belt. So they glove painted instead of brush or roller painted the tower.
And developed multiple melanomas and cancers 2 years later, probably. Shouldn't laugh about that.
I mean, it's been a freshly clean, freshly painted radio tower for as long as I've known it to be a radio tower.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing about you, is you actually did do radio work.
I mean, not professionally, but yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
You had a show.
I had a radio. I had a college radio show, which is not literally anyone can do that. You don't have to be in a college. If you have a town that has a college that has a radio station, you can show up and find a person there. It'll be a random person. You'll have no idea who it is. And you'll say, "Hey, what do I need to do to get a show?" And if you are not a student at that college, they'll be confused. But I'm not sure that they would necessarily say no. And now this doesn't if your college radio station is known enough in your town that people on the college campus have stickers of the radio station, this doesn't apply. But that's probably less than 15 stations around the US at this point.
So how many local bands beat down your door to get you to play a track?
None. I think you have this completely misconstrued.
Really?
I played an audio show with whatever music the Stacks had, and it was I guess Tuesday mornings from midnight to 2 a.m. So like we didn't have numbers on this, but I think actually no one listens to the show.
Actually,
which was fine by me. I just wanted to listen to music, and it was it was a slightly difficult to stream high quality music or file share high quality music at the time. So having a pair of rooms full of vinyl and CDs was my best access to a lot of different music. And this is like way before paid streaming services.
but on the resume, you were the drive time host on FAN in New York, right? I mean, this was like the biggest radio job ever.
No one knows I have this job. Like, I don't even know how you know I have this job. I might have just mentioned it when you were like, please be on a microphone with me, or we talked about it because we were talking about music. But yeah, no one knows I did this. There's no recordings of any of it, and if there was, like, nobody wants to hear it. It's not interesting. Think of it like having a mostly mostly Reels Instagram channel or Instagram page before there was any Instagram. Like, we're not gonna go back in the history books and be like, oh man, that Instagram page from 15 years ago is amazing. I can't believe we've dug up this archival footage. No, it's gonna be like throwaway. It's exhaust. The timeline is right now, whenever somebody wants to care about it or listen to it, and then like the shelf life is done.
Yeah. So did you draw up some questions? Some, is it AI or is it not AI?
I have Is It AI?
Let's
the
do
game's
it.
called. It's a 6-letter game. I don't count character. I don't count special characters. So when I don't count spaces. So Is It AI? The 6-letter game. I'm just going to go straight into it. Face recognition. Is it AI?
Yes.
Do you care to elaborate?
Well, I think there are enough tolerances, or there are enough distinguishing characteristics outside of what a camera system can do with like regular logic. I think you can capture with a deep learning system, you can capture enough variance of what makes a face unique to capture that. So yes.
Fingerprint recognition.
I'm gonna say no.
What's the difference between these two here?
I don't know. Yeah.
Amazing.
No, so here's why I say that is fingerprint technology's been around for a while, and that was like the OG way to solve crimes. So
yeah,
I don't,
Okay, so all right. So then if the OG way is I'm going to ink your print and we're going to roll your finger in ink and then roll it on a piece of paper, and then a fingerprinting expert is going to compare the two and, explain how they're the same based on the whorls. Now we put a computer that is now the brain of that intelligent, trained fingerprinter, and a computer has fully replaced that person. Is it AI?
Okay.
You already answered. I'm not going to make you change your answer. I can go to the next
Well,
one.
here. Okay, so here's the thing, and here is, if you have, if you give me a picture of the color black,
Yeah.
and you give me a picture of the color white,
Right.
we could semantically call a computer system that recognizes that difference AI. But so I think the benchmark for me is, do you need the machine? Because if it's something we can do, what's the use of having? Is it AI? Is it machine learning? If it's doing what either of our children could do, that's the question. I think it's a semantics question.
Okay. So next one is also related to things that either of our children could do. Calling balls and strikes in baseball without an umpire.
Yeah, so that's actually a thing.
I know.
Yeah, I don't think you need AI for that. I think you could. It depends on how it's executed.
Okay. What if we name the system? We're going to name the system that calls balls and strikes Umpy.
um, yeah, it could be an AI. It's an AI system.
Does it need to have a speaker to shout out balls and strikes and call them realistically, or is that not a component to whether it's AI or not?
Yeah, it's not. By the way, do you ever watch some of these really theatrical animated strikeout calls from umpires? Is that a thing that you've ever paid attention
I have
to?
watched that. Yeah,
Where are you, where do you come down on that? Like, I see some of these things, and it's pretty elaborate. Like, I respect the desire to be part of the show, but like, how do you get the muscle? How do you have the appetite to do that every day?
your job is to command the rules. And baseball is a game where there are rules that are bound by tradition and there are rules that are bound by regulation. And sometimes those two get blurry in the game of baseball. And if you exist as the arbiter of the places where it gets fuzzy, I think that it's perfectly reasonable to maybe be, like commanding of respect from everybody. So
Yeah.
you could look at it two different ways. You could say, I am physically, as a human being, barely capable of accurately describing a ball and a strike because that is a more difficult task than the human eye and mind are capable of doing. Or I can just yell loud enough that everybody here isn't gonna question that about me.
Yeah, or at least you'll delay the yelling. There will be some delay in the resistance to feel comfortable yelling will be great. I played baseball, right? Like that. I
I
have.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to like baseball, and then I got distracted by other things that were less time consuming than watching baseball, and I've fallen off the baseball bandwagon completely.
There is, if you're off the baseball bandwagon, you probably don't know this, but there is a huge convergence of machine learning, AI, and player development in baseball. And
Yeah.
it's changed the way players, well, it's changing the way players get paid, play the sport, how people are drafted. I mean, it's an interesting concept. I still think Major League Baseball players are the most non-linear system on the face of the earth. There's so
Well, sure.
there's so much voodoo. You don't know. I mean, some baseball, you have guys that are like 5'9" and can throw 100 miles an hour. You have guys that are 6'10" and can, and everywhere in between. I think there's so much voodoo in baseball, but I really enjoy the convergence of tech and AI and player development.
Okay, maybe we'll come back to baseball, but I have the next is it AI question, which it was going to be phrased slightly different, but now it's going to be this. Is it AI? Tommy John surgery performed by a robot,
Exclusively, solely by the robot?
only by a robot.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, follow up. Tommy John surgery performed by a robot commanded live by a surgeon.
Is the robot using computer vision? Is the robot is executing functions based on what a camera picks up?
No, it's being commanded by the surgeon directly.
Gray area. I'm going to say no.
Okay, all right. Third follow up to the same robot Tommy John surgery. The robot is named Slicey.
Yeah. Yes. Slicey.
Now it's AI.
It's if Slicey does it, it's AI.
All right. Pivot to the next one. We're gonna get away from baseball for the. Oh no, I'll tie it back to baseball. The team plane for the Major League Baseball team of your choosing is being flown by an autopilot, including takeoff and landing. Is it AI?
Yes.
Okay. The same plane is being flown by wire by an actual pilot, meaning there's no mechanical connection between what happens to the wing control surfaces and the inputs that the pilot gives.
Yeah, it's not AI.
Still not A.
Yeah.
Okay. What if the control surfaces are also being adjusted constantly by a computer? The pilot flying the plane can control the direction of the plane, but they don't control any of the small micro motions to, I don't know, improve fuel efficiency or make it a smoother flight or something.
Then those systems could be AI. But it could also be it. I'm going to go back to yesterday's definition. Again, the semantics game can play it loose and fast and free. Um, a lot of things can be called AI semantically, but I think today, if you're talking about AI with folks that, practitioners are in the space, you're talking about computer vision, you're talking about voice, you're talking about text analytics, generative for sure. I think there's like a handful, 5 or 6 applications where that's what would be considered AI.
Nice.
A bunch
What?
a bunch more that are, machine learning, any machine learning models, unsupervised or supervised machine learning models. I think those are, then there are some fringe cases that are like in between. I think recommendation engines, like if you're on Amazon and based on things that you've purchased, they have a list of things on the side that they want you to buy. A lot of that's just, machine learning, but I think there's fuzzy cases there. Same thing with ads that show up in social media. It's not necessarily AI, but it's like fuzzy. You could make cases.
And there, you have to know more about how the thing works
100%.
to classify it as AI or not AI.
100%. That's the case. Well, interesting fact, and this is one of the like fascinating topics of AI for me, is that the math of AI, by and large, transformers, which are the sort of the models behind generative AI, are relatively recent, like past 5 years, 7 years, I think 16 or 17. But by and large, the math of AI is very old, and compute has been the bottleneck for the longest time. And it's funny now because compute, maybe to a certain extent, is still a bottleneck, but not really. Compute does the heavy lifting of AI now. I think for AI to be what the gloom and doom people think that it's going to be, in terms of, sentient beings that we have to really consider keeping a wrap on, or they're going to take over the planet. I think there needs to be new math. And there's I'm not a researcher. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing uh, the math behind these things as research. So this is just my, they may have it, there may be some progressive group that's got a handle on that now. But I think for the real nightmare scenarios to play out, I think we need new math. I think compute's doing the heavy lifting now. The algorithms we've had for quite some time, but the bottlenecks have kind of reversed. I think here's a concrete example. I think you'll never really get fully autonomous vehicles until there's new math. You'll never get AGI until there's new math. And here's the reason why. Is this boring? Like, should we talk about
What's
something else?
what's AGI? That's the only part that lost me.
Artificial general intelligence. So it's like systems, machines that truly do think like we think. And even the most advanced AI now is like not even remotely close to the capabilities of a toddler, like not even
Right.
close. So AGI is the notion that a system, a machine, will truly be more intelligent than we are. And that's when we have to worry about them writing their own code and taking over the world and all those sort of sci-fi doomsday scenarios. Maybe, but I think we have to have new math. And here's the reason why. You've heard, we talked about Tesla a lot yesterday, but you've heard Elon Musk and other folks talk about edge cases. And what it is basically all AI, all machine learning, all predictive analytics. Um, you're They're pattern matching algorithms. So they can only give output based on what they've been trained on, unless it's an unsupervised algorithm. It's another story. So algorithms they're pattern matching, and they're not creating new content. They're finding relationships in the training data that they've been exposed to. So think about an autonomous car in New York City in and I'm sure you've seen the video of the Tesla in full self-driving mode that was following a truck, hauling a trailer that had a flashing construction sign, or construction sign on the back. Well, the car thought that was a stop sign and stopped in the middle of an expressway. And that's an edge case. You can't train on that. That's not in training data. Now that's in training data now, but you'll never capture all of the potential edge cases, all of the scenarios that a fully autonomous AI system would come into. So that's today the math is pattern matching algorithms. The new math would need to be, oh, this looks like this other system. And it could reason through like we would reason through in 2 seconds. Oh, this truck's hauling a traffic signal. I don't need to stop in the middle of the road. Nothing's going to happen. The system doesn't have the knowledge to reason through that because we need new math. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. If there's a car being pulled backwards on a tractor trailer, it looks like oncoming traffic.
And
You have to know otherwise to be able to make that conclusion.
you have to have, and we don't know what it is that we have that makes us be able to reason through these things. So I think this is why a lot of people, in terms of the AI becoming sentient and taking over the world, a lot of people are like, well, there's got to be some new phenomenon happen before that's a problem, because we don't even understand how we do this. We don't understand how, what are the mechanisms behind, if you're driving behind the truck pulling a construction sign, instantly what's going on. Like, it's a bunch of experiences, yeah, but you can reason through things that you haven't been exposed to. We don't know how that happens. So I think the anyway, I've belabored that
So
point.
corner case, evil AI, sentient being, malicious intent, or something like malicious intent. You're calling it here. Not going to happen unless something very significant changes. We're not on track for that now.
We need new math or a way to engineer systems using, like, and again, there are research people that are experts on this. There are researchers that, have a much stronger handle on this than I do.
I'll go find them. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they probably know, but maybe getting it explained might be a challenge. But I think there's a need for a new system or a new math before that's a true concern.
I think that the regular concerns that are obvious and boring are way more likely to be something to be worried about,
So,
and much less attractive to write newspaper articles about.
and that is a phenomenal point. And so I'm a huge fan. There's a guy named Rodney Brooks. I don't know if you've
Very
heard the
good.
name.
Yeah, I know.
He wrote, for me, has been like a seminal paper for me, or it's an article. It wasn't an official paper, but he's written many along this vein. That's basically like GPS. We tend to overestimate, the near term capabilities and underestimate the long-term capabilities. Same thing with AI. Like with AI, there's a lot of overestimation of what can and can't be done today, but maybe, and because we don't know, there's an underestimation of what the impact will be long-term. Think about, the parallel that he uses, which is a good one, is GPS. We couldn't imagine life today without GPS, but it wasn't understood that way when it was first used until, weapon systems and that sort of thing. And I think one of the key points, and it's not his point, but one of the key points that he brings up is that we tend to underestimate things long term and overestimate them in the near term. And I think that's the case with AI.
Have you read Rodney Brooks's predictions or his predictions scorecard?
Yeah.
Explain what this is briefly.
It's basically he started a list, maybe it was 4 years ago. I don't know what the timeline was, but he started a list of, like, I'm going to say hype, all of the things that people said we would have happen from AI in this increment of time. And he started a running list of, did it happen in that period of time or not? And
He started in 2018.
2018, yeah. And I see, for me, I think he is, it depends on what camp you want, who you pay attention to. But for me, Rodney Brooks is probably the most measured, sort of reasonable and rational voice on this, on robotics and AI and capabilities. And there are other folks that I like as well, lesser known, but he's a very moderate voice. I feel like pragmatist. He's a pragmatist on the topic.
He seems extremely pragmatic. If you're not familiar with this guy's background, he's most well known for founding iRobot, which is famous for launching Roomba, and then after that, he had another well-known-ish, at least in tech spaces, company where it's called Rethink Robotics, and they had semi-humanoid robots, two models. One had like an iPad on its head and a face. The robot's name was Baxter. So because it has a name, I think we decided definitively that means it must be an AI.
It's a great point. It's a great point.
I can't find the source of this quote, which is funny because I bring it up a lot. But when you think about robots, everything's going to be called a robot until it's useful, and then it gets called a washing machine or a dishwasher or
It's true.
it gets a name, a vacuum cleaner. It gets a name, right? So robot there is no universally agreed upon definition of robot either. This is not something that has that has it has a, like, you'd know it if you see it definition, but it's not like there is a sanctioning body that has a definition that everybody agrees to, or like one um, you know like a citation that is ubiquitously cited as this is the definition of a robot.
Can we have a like an esoteric detour?
Is it about robots? Because if so, sure. If it's not about robots, yes, also
It
yes.
involves robots. So I've thought about this a lot, and um, I don't have an answer or a position, but I'm looking for it. I'm looking for this like perspective. I'm looking for a perspective. It feels like to me, whether robots, AI, tech today, and this is a point I've made glibly a few times, and this is not the focus of what I want to say, but it feels like tech today is a big part of like the as seen on TV movement from 20 years ago. And it's, the money follows flashy gadgets and, tricks and that sort of thing. But generally, the more esoteric part of this is generally um, tech is graded on convenience, improvements respective to to convenience. How much more convenient can we make life? But is that the right measure? Is there a measure? Because I would argue that people are way less, they have way less purpose today, like as a group, as a body, as a culture, especially here. We have, it feels like people have no purpose. There's no cohesion. There's no sense of community, or a weakening, a strain on community. And it feels like tech should be measured against that as well. Like how much are you improving the purpose and the meaning and the function of people's lives versus just how many food delivery apps does one need? How many different apps do you need to put a picture of yourself? And to me, and maybe, again, somebody's done this kind of work, but it feels like tech should also be measured against, are we developing things that make people have more meaningful and enjoyable purpose driven lives?
Well, you can't put a price on likes.
On what? On
Likes. You
likes.
can't
Yeah,
put a price on likes.
that's the currency today. It's crazy. It's wild.
I think what's funny about the statement that you can't put a price on likes is that you literally can put a price on
Yeah,
likes.
you can buy them.
People price likes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can definitely buy it. Have you read Bowling Alone? Do you know this book?
I don't.
This came out in 2000. Robert D. Putnam is the author,
Okay.
and so the title of the book is Bowling Alone. The subtitle is The Collapse and Revival of American Community. I'm just going to read from bowlingalone.com the description of this. The first sentence kind of covers it. Uh, the author shows how we become increasingly disconnected from family, friends, neighbors, and our democratic structures, and how we may reconnect. And the stock of social capital has plummeted, which impoverishes lives and communities. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not read this book, but I'm aware of the book, and I am aware of the main concept of the book. And the book also has a lot of uh, like statistical data included, which, until someone puts out some sort of a popular counter to Bowling Alone, I'm going to assume that when a professor writes a book with data and statistics in it, that they've done a mostly good job, and that the collective critical and gotcha seeking internet is going to vet their data better than I would if I read the book, which I think is going to be an unpopular opinion, that I should not read books and the statistics in them, and that I should probably make my own judgments about this. But Bowling Alone is not on a list of books I'm likely to read anytime soon, but I'm still going to bring up Bowling Alone as a concept because the title and that one line seems very clear to me in what the book is about.
Yeah. So, what do you think? That's what we want to tease out here, Mister Waddell. What do you think?
I think number one, that, and this is this is directly counter uh, to having pulled up a book. Maybe if I read this book, I wouldn't hold this opinion. I think that it's really difficult to quantify and measure connectedness and social engagement and feelings of self-worth and a sense of agency, particularly if we're talking about collective sense of agency, social responsibility measures. So I think given that it's extraordinarily difficult to quantify those things at all, much less measure them consistently over time and compare them, before we ever get to any correlation, before we get to any causality, just the baseline, is it true that people are less connected now, is a debate that I would love to have Rodney Brooks weigh in, because as a pragmatist, I'm like, what's he even going to bother to try and come up with here, given the real shortage of hard figures to actually work from? And is he going to punt on the question and talk about something that's either higher level philosophy above are we connected or not, or much more in the weeds, which is, well, if we all did this little task each day, that would greatly improve our connectedness.
Yeah, I think I'm creating a broader definition than just connectedness. I think again that's a semantical discussion. It can be a
Yeah.
semantical discussion. I think what I'm asking is purpose, and do people feel fulfilled at the level that have they ever? I don't know. I don't have the answer to this. Have people ever felt fulfilled? It's just, it was covered up by the fact that you had to work 20 hours a day to eat. And, you didn't think about the sort of nature, the existential questions that we have the luxury to think about today. Is that what it is? I don't know, but it feels like tech should be measured on that. It feels like that should be part of what, venture money follows. And maybe it is. I don't know what that would be. But
I mean, we can talk about the artistic poetry of DALL-E. And I don't mean Salvador Dali. I mean DALL-E.
Yeah. Yeah. Full
Are you
circle.
worried? Are you worried
Not at all.
that your art will be construed as potentially AI art?
The interesting thing is I'll be curious to see how, because anybody who's doing generative AI is training on foundational models that either, from an open source perspective, you can get from a place like Hugging Face, or you've got, Bard or Lambda, or, any of the chat GPTs, any of the foundational models that these big companies have all been trained on the open internet. And there are all sorts of, I think they've just started, but like there's litigation on copyright and,
Right.
all of these things. So does industrial company X, do you want to potentially be on a class action lawsuit if you're using one of these foundational models to do something, even if you have to fine tune it, and you do, but you fine tune on your company's data, you're still using models that have been trained on copywritten information from the open internet. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
It's been 35 years and we're right back to sampling.
Yeah.
Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby sounds exactly like what's the song? What's the Queen?
Under Pressure, or
Under Pressure.
yeah.
Sounds exactly like the Queen David Bowie song.
Did you ever hear the story about that? And I forget who the guy was.
As in how that got made, or Robbie Van Winkle, aka Vanilla Ice's explanation of how they're totally different?
About him being hung from a very high floor of a hotel by his ankles.
Oh my God. Vanilla Ice himself?
Yeah, Van Winkle.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I forget who it was. It was one of the. I don't know the story. I shouldn't throw out like a partial truth and try to explain the whole story. But yeah, that's the gist of it anyway, is someone wasn't happy with either the use of the sample or the positioning of, he was very popular and made a lot of money off of appropriating other things, and someone wasn't happy with that. So one of the big higher up record label, sort of, I forget who it was. We could look it up, but they
called it tough.
They
called it tough and took it out on the artist.
Yeah, and they At least that's a story. That was a story that made its way around all the media long time ago. Has to be true.
I
Anyway,
lost my train. I lost my train of thought, but I had something super important that was relevant.
sampling.
Oh yeah, so time goes fast forward. It, it, the the problem of how do you manage derivative works and derivative works and works that are derivative or very similar but not the same, not a copy. So if I'm not sampling under pressure, but I am covering a section of under pressure and then putting a rap song that's completely different in the other verses of under pressure, the usage of these things and how you manage the rights and the derivations and the uh, basically I'm going to use a very broad brush here and say make the people involved with this who created the original works and the derivative works and derivatives of derivatives. There is a way for all of the people involved in that to be less unhappy than they are now and less unhappy than they were 25, 30, 40 years ago when this was coming up as an issue to begin with. And humankind has not yet arrived at the solution to this problem. But any one person who's looking at that problem can conceptualize that this is a solvable problem that future humanity will probably not be that worried about. Similar problem, bear with me here, it's going to make sense.
That's a fair
Similar
point.
problem. There is only one objectively correct way to set up a checkout line in a grocery store, and that's to have one line that feeds to multiple cash registers. That's the only right way. It's faster, the throughput is better, customer satisfaction is higher. The only reason that you wouldn't do that is if you think that there's significant revenue coming from the tabloids and gum being sold at the register, and exposing more people to tabloids and gum for a longer period of time increases the sales of tabloid and gum. But if you look at certain electronics retailers, Best Buy pioneered this. You also see it at TJ Maxx and Marshalls and Home Goods. If you just make a snaking line that goes to multiple cashiers and then cram that snaking line full of useless crap at the front of the store, that is just as good as putting the useless crap in a number of stalls, and you don't get a crowd at the front of the store. So this is objectively the correct way to do this. It's not me talking. It's just you just use your eyes. It's science.
Science.
And we are not there yet, and I don't think we're necessarily that close to having this be implemented as the solution, even though we've arrived at the solution and it's right there. And so I see that the derivative works thing, the grocery store line, there are others, but it's these problems that are like some future generation is just going to have this totally sorted out, and we are just happen to be unfortunate enough to not, well, maybe unfortunate, maybe it doesn't even matter either way. But we just happen to live in a time when we have not collectively sorted it yet.
Yeah. And I think the thing that makes the really exacerbates the problem is there's so much money at stake. And that always you take the sampling parallel at a scale. We're not talking about, best case scenario. What was that? $100 million, $200 million, $300 million. These are economy changing scales of commerce potentially with generative AI. And I think that will complicate, as is always the case with anything, will complicate maybe what the pragmatic solution is from what is the best interest of those with the biggest hammer. And it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. You asked me, backtracking just a little bit, you asked me if I'm scared about the sort of encroachment of generative AI, like stable diffusion models on art. Unequivocally, no. Like, not a chance. Do you know how hard it is to get usable art out of prompt engineering?
No, I don't, because as we know, I'm a massive applied AI skeptic and don't mess with this stuff at all. Like between questions over the rights and the obviousness that this was clearly generated by AI, and the people that I am using the art with will know it was generated by AI. That the ease with which I have a system for how to get, like I'm mostly making like business graphics, right? So if I'm making something for fun, sure, I'll use AI, but like the stuff I make for fun is like I'll sketch a picture of a thing, or I'll draw with my kids, or like I'll make a multimedia thing, and it makes no difference whether like the outcome doesn't matter and the how doesn't matter. It's just practice, right? I'm just doing it to do it. If I have business graphics that I need to make, which arguably am getting paid indirectly for one way or another, there is there's no upside to learning a new system at this moment unless that new system is flawless and immediate and free, because I have a system that is clearly distinguishable from AI and yields fantastic results for the purpose that I've been using it for. I'll give you an example. I gave a speech about CNC machine tools, and uh, the premise of this was that all machine tools and industrial equipment, for that matter, they're all Franken machines, meaning they're like an amalgam of different bits from different places. And so for my slides, I needed to make, well, I didn't need to, I chose to make a picture of a CNC machine that was also a Frankenstein's monster, right? So like to do this, I just dragged boxes in PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever. I just dragged boxes onto an icon of a CNC machine. And for me, this was pretty quick and easy and effective. And for somebody else, drawing it would have been more effective. And for somebody else, using generative AI to make it would have been effective. And so I have the tool set already that is like nobody is going to think it was somebody else's slides. If I see my slides get used somewhere else, I'll know it was my slides. And frankly, I don't care about rights to them, because the package deal was I'm like giving the presentation and the slides and the industry knowledge and the personal network and relationships. So I'm not really trafficking in the art by itself. And so I'm not terribly concerned about an AI taking my role either. And I think it probably at some point it'll be like, oh, the easiest thing to do is to get some generated imagery, and I'll use the generated imagery. Or even more likely would be I use a stock image service, and somewhere a provider to the stock image service has used generated imagery. But even then, like, okay, so what's the difference between using background eraser in a pastiche that, or a collage that somebody has prepared, and then I buy their collage, or they sell their collage to a service, a subscription service. I subscribe to the service, and now they use background eraser. Did they use AI? Sure. Did they use a paintbrush? I don't care. Did they paint it on a piece of paper and then take a photo of it to turn it into a digital asset? I also don't care. I just want the thing that I'm buying to be the thing that I'm getting. And so, and I think that's a very unartistic mentality. Like an artist will not like the artist alarm bells are going off about like, well, sure, but you're just using that for your corporate slides. So like that's totally a different space. Great. That's a totally different space. But in the space that I'm working with, visual design and graphics and such, the workflow matters a lot, and the breakup and segmentation and specialization down my art supply chain. As far as I'm concerned, I'm looking for like efficient product that I also like and find compelling and works. And AI is not there yet.
Are cover bands artists?
Yeah, I don't want to go see them, and I definitely wouldn't listen to their albums. And this also gets confusing too, because what about cover bands what about a non-cover band doing an album of covers? It's totally different.
Completely different.
Yeah,
I want
totally different.
I want to see um I want to see Jay Farrar's take on Woody Guthrie songs or Doug Psalms tunes. Like I want to see someone do I respect both artists. I want to see that. Do I want to see Ricky leave his uh Best Buy job and get the boys and do like a bunch of 80s songs? No, but that's not my scene. But the question is that art?
Have you listened to the T-Pain album, the covers album?
I barely know who T-Pain is.
So this one is layers and layers and layers deep. T-Pain got famous by using autotune
Yeah.
in an unconventional way. So that's weird right on the top, right? He autotune was supposed to slip into the background. T-Pain had his whole vibe was based on using autotune, not in the background at all, like right in. Uh, but T-Pain, whose actual name I don't know, he was just a singer, right? Like he was not a gimmick or a novelty artist previously. He was just a singer, and you read press about how he kind of like his idols would sort of poo-poo his music because it was so not one note, it was a bunch of different notes, but those notes were flawlessly arranged with auto tune, and they were considered a total gimmick. uh and so then he went on one of the singing shows, one of the ones where they don't know who's singing until the very end, like you do the whole competition blind so that you're basing it just on the voice. And I think he either won or like placed really high on the singing show. And he was like, "Take that, haters! Where's your auto tune now?" And now, just last year, he put out an album of covers. My favorite one is War Pigs. So T-Pain, the auto tune rapper, covers semi deep track from Black Sabbath, War Pigs.
Did he have someone play like he had a backing band, or was it like a digital rendition of the song? Was he sampling?
Well, first of all, I, as a listener, can't tell. Second of all, as far as I can tell, it sounds like a band, and sounds like it's him in a band, and he's done like studio session videos, and he's like did like a yeah. It's crazy. And then, and not to this is I guess the T-Pain hour now, but
Well, I
layers and layers and layers of computers and people all intermingling.
that's well, I think we need some time on that, like the state of art and music.
Do you want me to close with some music I made with a computer?
Yeah.
It's not great, but I don't care. This was made with a computer. How do I fade it?
I dig it.
I don't. It's not very long either. It's probably
It's
gonna
got
stop.
a
It's
it's
gonna
got
be
a
awkward for us.
it's got a DJ Shadow vibe.
That's high praise.
Well, just
I'm not gonna tell anybody how I did it either. It's like that's pure samples. This is me pressing buttons on. And also, like, I didn't know when it ended. That was supposed to fade out.
so
Fade out. Out.
there's an electronic guy band under the moniker Rival Consoles that I really like.
Yeah, they're great. He's great.
He's great. Yeah. I think he's just takes his laptop out and that's his show.
Yep.
Yeah. I respect that. Like I'd love his music.
Let's take it out. Fade me. Fade me.